The Acer X34P is the follow-up to the hugely popular and generally excellent Acer X34. Like that display, it boasts a 34-inch curved IPS LCD panel, a 3440x1440 resolution and G-Sync. But here Acer has improved some of the key shortcomings of its predecessor, making for one of the best gaming displays you can buy. The good stuff starts with this monitor's design. Around the back, the glossy plastic of the previous model has been replaced by a brushed plastic finish that looks far nicer and won't show fingerprints and dust so readily. Around the front, things are much as they were before. There's the solid metal stand, the matching grey plastic strip along the bottom bezel, and the Acer Predator logo. You also get low-profile bezels, though notably these aren't as narrow as the low-profile bezels on some displays. The X34P also has a slightly tighter curve to it than the previous version. This doesn't exactly leap out at you, but it works nicely, pulling in the edges of the monitor enough to improve the viewing angle without feeling like it's encroaching on your desk like the massive Samsung CHG90 or compromising the view in any other way. Another feature carried over from the previous X34 is the underlighting, although here you get 10 LEDs instead of 9. Otherwise it offers the same choice of breathing, flashing or static lighting styles, and you can choose from 7 colour modes, including one that has the LEDs try and match the colour of what's on screen. The latter would have been my preferred choice, but annoyingly it doesn't let you adjust the brightness. Also emanating from the bottom of the screen is perhaps this display's biggest surprise. You get a pair of unexpectedly capable speakers. There's far more volume and depth than the vast majority of monitor speakers, to the extent you could easily get away without separate speakers if you only use them occasionally. Joining the new look back of the display is a slightly tweaked stand design. You still get the mix of a grey painted metal base, the brushed shiny metal rotating mechanism and a black plastic main section, but the plastic now fits in a little better with the rest of the back's overall design. The stand also offers height adjustment, rotation and tilt, though as with all these 34-inch ultra-wide displays, you can't pivot the display into a portrait mode. At the top of the stand there's also a convenient carry handle as before. Connectivity hasn't changed from the X34 either, though the placement of the ports has slightly. The power, DisplayPort and HDMI inputs are now housed in a compartment that can be covered over to neaten things up, while the 4 USB ports are kept separate for easy access. This largely makes sense, except the USB uplink connection is also external, despite it seemingly being the sort of permanent cable that should also be under the cover. Also, the vertical alignment of the video inputs makes them a bit awkward to plug and unplug. Above the connectivity are 2 plastic sections that can be unclipped to access the 4 screws that attach the stand. Remove these and you can fit an alternative monitor mount. Moving on to this display's on-screen display controls, and they're excellent. A mini joystick and 3 buttons are used to control the menus, and the way they work is really intuitive. The menus themselves also respond quickly and have all the options you'd hope for. The picture menu lets you adjust basics like brightness and contrast, while the colour menu has a plethora of options. You can alter the gamma curve, set the colour temperature and saturation, and even adjust colour balance via cyan, yellow and magenta, as well as red, green and blue. The gaming menu lets you overclock the display from its default 100Hz up to 120Hz. You can also add an aim point, an FPS overlay, and you can adjust overdrive. You only get 3 options for the latter, but these are sufficient. Turning overdrive off completely and there's obvious ghosting. At extreme there's obvious inverse ghosting, but at normal there's an ideal compromise. So when it comes to the display itself, and well, if you haven't tried a 34-inch 1440p display before, they are fantastic. The extra width is super useful for work and great for movies and gaming too. I said in my review of the Asus PG27UQ that using a standard 27-inch display for showcasing such amazing HDR technology was the wrong move, and that they should have used a 34-inch display. Reviewing this display just a few weeks later really drives that point home. These ultra-wide monitors still feel like the ultimate upgrade. It's not just a big high-resolution panel either, it's also a high-quality one. You don't get any headline-grabbing HDR, but instead it just provides excellent overall image quality. For a start, viewing angles are superb, with almost no change in colour even at extreme angles. Colour reproduction is also fantastic, with every subtle change in tone accounted for properly. Out-of-the-box calibration is not perfect, but it's good enough for most uses, and if you are able to calibrate this display, the results are as good as you can get for a non-HDR gaming display. To calibrate this example of the X34P, I reduced the brightness to 27, then switched to the user colour temperature option and tweaked the RGB values to 49, 47 and 50, plus I switched to the 1.9 gamma setting. The uniformity of the image across the whole expanse of the screen isn't bad either, considering the size of this thing. There's just a 4% average variance in brightness across the whole of the display. Admittedly there's a slightly greater drop in the bottom left corner than I'd hoped for, but it's still manageable. The only major issues for this display overall are the usual problems with IPS LCD panels, which are low contrast compared to VA type LCDs, a slower response time than TN type LCDs, and IPS glow. The lower contrast is something I'd personally take over the worse viewing angles, slow response time, and less accurate colour reproduction of VA displays, but your priorities may vary. Likewise, the slower response time compared to TN panels is more than made up for by the vastly better overall image quality. After all, this isn't really meant to be a competition level gaming monitor, but one for general at-home use. As for the IPS glow, open up a pure black image and sit reasonably close, and you can clearly see what looks like backlight bleed in the bottom corners. Move even further off axis and this lighter patch becomes a significant distraction. However, sit back a little and this disappears, and moreover, of all the problems that can occur with LCD monitors, I strongly feel IPS glow is the least distracting in day-to-day use. With anything other than a pure black image, you really don't notice it. As for gaming performance, the increase from 100Hz to 120Hz makes more of a difference than I expected. Flipping between the two frame rates and the latter feels just a little bit snappier. That said, I was still reasonably happy playing the likes of Counter-Strike, PUBG and Quake on this screen at either 100Hz or 120Hz. You'd still want to step up to at least a 144Hz TN screen for competition level playing, but for more casual online fun, this display and others like it are more than adequate. As for G-Sync, it works as well as ever, producing a smooth and tear-free image that combined with the overall image quality makes for an utterly absorbing gaming experience. So all told, this is a truly fantastic display that comfortably surpasses the previous X34 and current Asus PG34-8Q. The only competitor that I've yet to try that could hold a candle to this screen is the Alienware AW3418DW, which I do hope to get into review sometime soon. So while it is very expensive and arguably a bit overpriced thanks largely to the inclusion of G-Sync, this is still the high-end gaming display that I'd recommend right now.